Let's start to wrap up the discussion and hear from the readouts from our press partners about what was taking place at each table on the protection track. Jason, let's start with you.
Start with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2. All right. Look at the boxes working. Yay. All right. Thank you, Jay. So I sat at a very small table, and our conversation was a lot about the high-value assets and the starting point with data. And the fact is, if you think about it as a staircase through the cyber sprint and beyond, and the binding operational directive from DHS, agencies were starting at the very top, and now they're working their way down. And when you protect data, you got to know what you have in the risk management. So that was kind of the discussion at my table, which was just basically 3 of us. So I'm going to go to a bigger table that had much more healthy discussion, and Kathy Conrad's going to talk to us.
Okay, I'm kind of bummed. I thought you were going to throw it to me. No, that's all right. We got time constraints
I heard
here.
these stories about water, and it was
Yeah. So we had a really lively conversation about the importance of shifting to a risk-based approach that takes into account the need to be focused on devices and data rather than boxes. And with respect to TIC particularly, and FedRAMP to some extent, we really need to start from scratch. We need to acknowledge that in today's world of cloud, instead of trying to evolve TIC, we need to start with a clean slate, bring together an empowered product owner who convenes a tiger team with all the key stakeholders at the table: industry, ICIMSI or the CISO community, the CIOs, NIST, DHS, working together with clear milestones and clear goals to evolve the policy to reflect today's risk-based environment.
Good job. All right, so we're going to go to Tom in the far corner and skip Francis in the middle this time. Tom.
Okay, here I
There you
am.
go.
Yes, I like working the peripheral corners out here. I used to be a boxing coach. But I was thinking, I went to my first ELC in '91. I went to my first computer security conference, as they called it in those days, in 1986. Back when there were only 237 servers on the internet and nobody had email. And so in many ways, we're talking about the same issues, only on different technology. Nobody talks about telnet attacks or your value-added network, are they any good, or whether X25 is safer and this kind of stuff. But same problem. So we had a really lively discussion at this table between 2 gentlemen that have dealt with this in great detail. So I'm going to start with GSA's Earl Warrington first.
I will be. Yes, sir. You mean I can't project the way I want to project? Is that what you're telling me? Not to worry. Anyway, very quickly, we actually talked 2 levels of cybersecurity, both from a domestic standpoint and from an international standpoint. And from my standpoint, in this particular case, I'm going to talk to the domestic side. Part of this is taking a look at data ownership being the first set. The second piece is understanding what the boundaries are associated to your overall operation. Within that boundary, at that point, how do you control that boundary? How do you make sure that your data is secure? How do you do continuous monitoring associated to that, which is a key aspect of this? And then also, what happens after you've bled the data, meaning somebody's actually breached the data and taken the data? Are there legal recourses that you can deal with in on the domestic side? And the answer is yes. And in that particular case, when you look at cybersecurity, risk management is one of those key aspects of doing business today. And a part of every delivery of every single application and/or platform, cybersecurity should be one of those questions that you should be looking at, and the risk management associated with that. But it doesn't stop the day that you actually bought that application. There has to be ongoing maintenance and ongoing continuous monitoring of that particular information, because as the data grows, it becomes more valuable, and as that more valuable takes place, you're going to be open to more folks trying to hack that particular piece of information. So that's where we are on the domestic side. So I'm going to turn it over to my other friend here from transportation.
Transportation? USDA, absolutely. This is the floorboard scraping Ron Thompson.
Thank you, Earl. So we talked about data ownership and crossing really international boundaries, and the need to have laws and really to address once data is actually breached. Who actually owns it? If it's in another state, does it become their property? So crossing international boundaries on data that actually belongs to U.S. companies, U.S. government departments or organization is a big barrier right now, and it is unclear. Some nations we do have reciprocity. Some nations are adversaries, and we don't. So once it's out, how do we get it back? What is the law, the rule of law, to get that data back? And who really owns it? So, Tom, that's we're seeing as a big opportunity going forward.
All right, thank you. And remember, the USDA is the only federal agency where you can have a career sexting chickens. Next to Francis Rhodes.
Thanks for that fantastic lead-in, Tom. I'm not quite sure what to do with that exactly. Sorry. Yeah, and yeah. No, I can't even go there. I appreciate. Yeah, I know. What do you do with that exactly? Before I come to my friend Jim Moss from Energy to talk about what they discussed here at the table, a couple of things about my new friend Marty Cummings. Marty and I last night did our little thing about ELC 2018, and Marty suggested in the Now It Can Be Told department, Marty suggested that when we went up, we should both act like we were drunk. And I said, no, I don't think we should send Ken to the emergency room in Williamsburg the night of ELC. The other thing is these luggage tags that are on the table, Marty was telling me about the work that goes into those. And I said, what's really exciting about them is that no matter where you're going, your luggage will wind up in Philadelphia next October. So nicely done. That's a great feature. Jim, tell us what you had here.
Thank you, Francis. And again, we were focused mostly on that moving beyond the perimeter and boundary-based protections. And for us, it's real clear that the old techniques just aren't going to work. You know, some people are proposing sort of keeping track of data at the individual layers. For every, if we've got 100 databases in our agency, we've got, within that data, each database, we've got 10, 20 different areas of data that we have to protect. And Francis may get access to one area, and our other folks may have access to financial data, that sort of thing. That just doesn't work. Before you know it, you got 1,000 different cells and these things, and people come and go, and that approach doesn't work. So, moving on to the new sort of solutions, we've got a lot of hope. We've heard some more about blockchain, sort of encoding that data, so once it's escaped, it's only available to those people that should have access to it, so we don't have to worry about the boundaries so much. So it's very key, so we need to explore that first. We also heard more about in a proposal on the data exchange area about something called the FAIR Institute, which is something set up, as we understand it, mostly by private sector and the insurance industry to help protect private sector firms. You know, they can buy insurance companies, and it's a way to put a financial value on cybersecurity and the way they can insure these areas, and they are actually working on common terminology. And supposedly it's something that the FAIR Institute's only been around for a little over a year, and yet they've got 2,000 private sector members. So I think the public sector needs to more look at that sort of thing, or at least the leadership and terminology, that sort of thing. Again, we are self-insurer, and we have to still be responsible for our own data, but it's something we can learn there. And again, the federal government's got to take a leadership, both internationally and otherwise, in this whole area. So we're excited about the opportunity. Now that we solved that issue, I'm turning it about to Francis.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. Thanks to everybody who participated. And Casey, it's back to you on stage.
All right, thank you. Thanks to Tom and Francis and Jason for helping us to run this session, and thank you all for your participation at the tables.